In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to identify and pronounce common prefixes. So for this activity, you are going to need your word mapping notes sheet, and you are going to need your cue cards. Mine are pink. They're on card, but I did provide those for you online, and it's not necessary to print them out. I just need you to use these cue cards for these notes. So we're gonna briefly go over that today. When you're reading, you can understand more about what you're reading if you know or can figure out the meaning of the words. So today you'll learn about a new strategy for figuring out what new words mean, and you'll start learning about prefixes. So you'll learn how to identify them and then how to pronounce them. And later you'll be learning their meaning. So I expect you to pay attention. I encourage you to take notes and participate in the discussion. And when I ask you to do some practice activities, I expect you to concentrate and work carefully so that you can reach mastery and move on to another lesson. So, in order to get ready to use the word mapping strategy or to figure out the meaning of words, you'll need to learn a little about how words are built. And just like a desk or a computer has parts, words have parts too. So these parts are made up of a combination of sounds. Some of these parts have a special meaning. Once you know the meaning of several word parts, you can start to figure out what many words mean. So the first card that I'm going to put out here is cue card number 1. And so it says that word parts that have meaning are called morphemes. A morpheme is a word or the smallest part of a word that expresses meaning. And so if you're following along with me, you will basically get all the answers to the notes here. So here it says word parts with meaning are called, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you this one, morpheme. Okay? And so then as I'm going along, I'm going to be presenting the cue cards and briefly going over them again, and then you're going to answer these on your notes, and this will be your assignment for today. Okay? So the word parts that have meaning are called morphemes, right? A morpheme is a word or the smallest part of a word that expresses the meaning. So an example would be the morpheme un, and it means not. So I did give you a copy of these, and so anytime it does ask you for a definition, you will have those, and you do have access to those. And so, but I'm going to go ahead and give you this one. Says the morpheme un means not, right? The morpheme book means something that you read that has many pages. So remember, a whole word can be a morpheme or part of a word. If you have never heard of morphemes, you may confuse them with syllables. So syllables are a word part, right? They're different from morphemes in that syllables are parts of a word that center on a vowel sound, and so they do not have meaning. Morphemes can include just one syllable or more than one more than one syllable, but they always have a very special meaning. So we're going to look at an example. Okay? So the next cue card that I'm going to be looking at is cue card 3. And so we're going to talk here about syllables versus morphemes. Okay. So how many syllables does the word unladylike have? So most of you learned how to clap the syllables out. Most of you have learned in the lower grades that they are centered on a vowel sound, right? So it has to have a vowel in it to be considered a syllable. So if I say unladylike, that has 4 parts. And there's a vowel in that part. There's a vowel in lay. There's a vowel in D, because remember that Y is sometimes used as a vowel. And like. And all of these have vowels. So there were actually 4 syllables in unladylike. So there are only 3 morphemes in this word, because unlady and like all have meaning. That is, we can say what they each mean. So if I were to separate it by morphemes, they're telling me that on my lists that I have here, I can look up un and it has a meaning, which in this case it means not. And then of course lady means a woman, and like means just that, like. So this would, somebody who is unladylike, if I'm making a prediction, I would say she does not act like a lady, right? That means, she's hooping and hollering, and she's saying foul language, and she's not sitting correctly. All of that stuff would be unladylike. Okay, we're gonna move on. So over the next couple of days, you're going to be learning about 3 types of morphemes. And those morphemes are prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Okay? And just a clue that that's also a question here on your notes. Okay, so what are prefixes? This should also be something that's very familiar to you. Prefixes are word parts with meaning that comes at the beginning of a word. Roots are word parts with meaning that are placed either at the beginning, middle, or end of a word. And in fact, they can be the whole word. Suffixes are word parts with meaning that come at the end of a word. The prefix and suffix can change a word's root meaning or add to it. So if you know the meaning of all the parts, you can usually figure out what a word means. Unfortunately, all words do not have these parts, so sometimes we just have to learn the meaning of certain words because we won't be able to figure them out. So just like I broke apart unladylike and I was able to look up each word part, each morpheme, to figure out what that word means. I already knew what the word meant, but if I didn't, knowing the parts of it would have helped me out. Okay. An example that I would give is cardio. Cardio is a root word, and it has to do with the heart. But if I didn't know that, and I listened to words that have cardio, like an echocardiogram, which is a test for your heart. What other words? A cardiologist is a heart doctor. Doing cardio as an exercise is called cardio because it helps speed up the pace of your heart. So maybe there's a super long medical term that has cardio in it, like echocardiogram. So if I wasn't sure, I could kind of figure it out because I already knew the meaning of part of that word. So if the doctor comes and tells me, if you don't start exercising and eating better, you can go into cardiac arrest, that might be like, oh my gosh, that has something to do with my heart. Is my heart gonna stop? So he's warning me, okay? So if you're not sure, breaking words apart can help you figure out the definition. So the strategy you'll be learning that involves working with prefixes, roots, and suffixes is called the word mapping strategy. You will use this strategy to decide what the prefix, root, and suffix of a word mean, and then to figure out what the meaning of the whole word is. We'll talk more about the steps of this strategy after you have learned about prefixes, roots, and suffixes over the next couple of days. So we're going to begin by talking more about prefixes. Again, what is a prefix? Okay, right, it's a word part that's found at the beginning of a word. A prefix consists of one or more letters placed at the beginning, and it usually has meaning, and it usually changes or adds to the word's original meaning in some way. The prefix definition list, which is I have here, and again I have given you a copy in Google Classroom. Several prefixes are used over and over in the English language. So if you can pronounce these common prefixes, you will be better able to pronounce the words if you encounter encounter in your reading. So, and you'll also be able to figure out their meaning. And so let's look at the list for some of the common prefixes. So there's a lot of them on here that I already know, like the word bi, as in bicycle. I know that means two because it has a bicycle has two wheels. But there are other words that start with bi that I know that means two, okay, two or twice. I know you are familiar with a lot of these, especially the ones that mean no or not. Hydro is one word that I know a lot of you are familiar with. It means water, right? Another, let's look at the second page. Some other words that they have here, of course, non, right, means not or the opposite of. Photo, in science you might have heard about photosynthesis, which has to do with the light that comes in, but also like photo as in photograph, it also uses light to take the picture. So re is one that I've seen a lot of. It means again or back. To redo is to do again, etc. So I'm sorry. So that's just a few of the words. I know that you may be more familiar with some of the other words, but just in case you aren't, again, these are located on Google Classroom in your resources. So let's move along. As you can see, like, let me see. A lot of words start with the prefix, like let's go back with re. The same is true for the other prefixes on the list. If you can pronounce and know the meaning of all these prefixes, you're one step closer to being able to read and understand the meaning of most words that you will encounter. So let's talk about a few more prefixes on that list. So let's say that you got the word discomfort on the test. So on the star it might tell you look at the meaning of the word discomfort as it is used in paragraph 3 of the selection. Well, I'm not really sure what discomfort means, but I do know what comfort means, right? To be comfortable, complacent, happy. But if I know what dis means, which I do, it means not apart or away, I can figure out what discomfort means. So to me, that's saying I'm not comfortable. So I'm showing discomfort. So if you're in, been doing a lot of exercise and you're sore, you would have some sort of discomfort, right? You're not comfortable, but it's not terrible. There is something else that you need to know about prefixes, and that's that some prefixes are included in other prefixes. For example, the prefix de is included in the prefix dem. That means that you have to be very careful when you see a word starting with de. Before you isolate de from the rest of the word, you must make sure that it's not followed by an M. If an M follows the DE, then the meaning will be different. Therefore, be sure to identify the biggest prefix that you can. What are some other prefixes on this list that are contained in other prefixes? So one that I see a lot of when I ask students, like, give me 10 words that have the prefix by. Well, as you know, like there's also bio, like as in biology. And so a lot of kids try to put biology under the by. But biology, the bio is the part that means life, right? And ology is the study of. So biology is the study of life. And it should not be confused with this. So that's something that you kind of need to be careful about. You're going to look at some of them. Some that might be confusing would be, of course, the letter A, as in apathy. You want to make sure that it isn't followed by some of these larger prefixes. And is another one. Con, as in connect, construct, because it could actually be contra. For, in, all of those are examples of prefixes that might get confused with other prefixes. Another thing that you would need to know about is tricksters. So tricksters, I'm sorry. When you're looking for prefixes, you really want to try not to be fooled by words that we call tricksters, okay? These are words that start with the same letters as one of the prefixes, but they really don't include a prefix. So one word that comes to mind is actually the prefix, the word read, as in read 180, R-E-A-D. That one, if it was given to you on a page, and I asked you to isolate the prefixes, your first instinct would be to separate re. But then AD doesn't have another meaning, so it doesn't fall under that. So read is just read, and that word would be considered a trickster word. So they're trying to trick you with those, okay? So I have the words read, return, recycle, and reel. So I'm gonna go ahead and write those down here so that you could see what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm looking at the word red, as in the color red, sorry. Return, recycle, and reel. So if I asked you to isolate these prefixes, some of these do have RE. So your first instinct would be to do this, right? I told you to isolate it. But if you look at D can't stand alone. It has no meaning. And so therefore, I should not have isolated re. And therefore, this word right here is a trickster. Okay? If I have the word return, I could isolate re. And remember that says re means back or again. So to return would be to turn back. So in this case, isolating the prefix re is correct. We also have the word recycle. Okay? So if I look at this, I know that cycle is another word, right? To means to do again. To recycle. To cycle is to go in a pattern, right? Over and over and over again. So to recycle would mean to use that over and over again. So in this case here, recycle is isolated correctly. And then we look at real. And if I did that and I looked at the AL, that doesn't make sense to me. Even if I went back on my prefixes sheet, I really need to look to see if there's another meaning. But I know there is not, so I would say that this is also an example of a trickster. Okay? So a prefix basically changes or adds to the meaning of the root. So if you take the letters re off of the words red and real, nothing is left but a few letters. Thus, be careful when you look for the prefixes of a word. Always ask yourself whether the letters you think are a prefix are really part of the root. So we'll be talking about that more tomorrow. Okay, and so for today, again, your assignment is to use the cue cards that were given to you on Google Classroom. You'll have all the way up to 8, but you'll only need to use up to 6 to answer the notes here on this page. And again, it is all basic stuff that I did go over today in our lesson. It has some fill in the blanks here. It gave you some little hints here to, if you're not sure where they go, make sure that you answer every single blank. And you can submit that online. If you are having trouble submitting that online, you can always take a picture and text it to me or email it to me at ygonzalez7532@uvaldecisd.net, or you can text it to me at 830-279-1491. I will be live streaming during your class. So that you can answer, so that I can answer any of your questions if you have any. But again, if you choose to do the lesson after school hours, I am available at that email and that phone number. So thanks again for those of you who watched the video.